do I have the long cheat sheet? Wait, is that this? No, I didn't get the long cheat sheet, Ryan's cheat sheet?
Oh, you need the long agenda? Is that what you're looking for?
No, the thing where he says all that stuff. You don't give that.
Could be in the drawer.
In the drawer?
In the drawer, maybe.
The quasi judicial sheet,
Yeah, that's it.
it should be in there.
Here, I got one.
This is it.
Did you need
Yes,
an
I have.
agenda?
No, I have a long agenda.
I'll be doing all the public comment tonight.
Do we have the other two or two newbies?
No, that,
No, they start in after the reorg meeting on Monday.
What does that mean?
New members.
No, the two that are in the sky.
We can't have them
So
in
the
the sky.
governor's order no longer allows board members to appear by video because it's not in our code, so you have to be present. There's no exception to it, and they refuse to attend.
They don't feel comfortable attending.
Okay. All right, here we go. We ready?
yes, please.
I'd like to call to order the local planning agency meeting for December, this says 21st, but it's not the 21st. 10th? December 10th.
Right meeting?
What is this? I'm going to go to my agenda. I don't know what this is that you gave me. December 10th, 2020. Could you please call roll?
Vice Chair Roberts,
I'm here.
Board Member Massing,
Here.
Chair Strom, Board Member Mathers,
Here.
Board Member De La Vega, Board Member Herbach,
Here.
Board Member Rich.
And if we could please stand for the pledge and then say the pledge too. I pledge
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
I'll approve. Seconded.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Agenda's approved. Oh, any opposed? Agenda's approved. We now have approval of the minutes. We have some July 16th amended minutes. Are there any other corrections or additions to those minutes? Is there a motion to approve those?
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the July 16, 2020 minutes. You want to call the roll for that?
Board Member Massing,
Yes.
Board Member Mathers,
Yes.
Board Member Herbach,
Here. Yes.
Vice Chair Roberts.
Yes, thank you. We also have November 12th minutes. Are there any additions, corrections, changes?
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the November 12th, 2020 minutes. You want to call the roll for that, please?
Board Member Mathers,
Yes.
Board Member Massing,
Yes.
Vice Chair Roberts,
Yes.
Board Member Herbach.
Yes.
So at this time, we take comments from the public on non-agenda items. The one item that we do have tonight is talking about an annexation of some city-owned property next to, on Haney Creek. So is there anybody in our public who would like to say anything? There's very limited people in our room. Is there anybody in the Zoom? Really? Okay, good. All right. So we'll assume there's nothing from the public on non-agenda items. Now we have comments from board members. And I'm going to take a minute to say something. So I just wanted my fellow board members to know that this will be my last meeting with you all. And I went back and looked, and I was on the City of Stewart Code Enforcement Board for 5 years. And I think I did a good job there, obviously. That's why I got the promotion to this board. Yeah, but some of the things that we did on that board is that we tried to to have a focus where we would understand the unique considerations of each property owner, apply some consistency, and then also hold the city to the same standards that we were holding property owners to. And we did such a good job with that, they went to a special magistrate and decided that that board was no longer needed. So that was good. Now, after 15 years on this board, the city has changed the way that they're doing things. So I'm being unreappointed or unqualified for an appointment, I guess would be the best way to say it. But what I would like to talk about for a minute is how I viewed the process. And really, I was hoping that the two that were in the sky were here because I think these comments might be more beneficial to them. But if anybody ever went back and looked, not that anybody would, and there's nobody from the public, so it's kind of all mute, but I did take a moment to write some stuff down, so I'm going to bore you with it.
And just so you know, people do actually watch them. We have a YouTube channel and all of these meetings are on.
Oh, okay, well, I might go back and watch myself, right? Yeah, fun, okay.
20 years from now, we'll all look so young, we'll want to.
Yeah, right, yeah. Okay, so we all realize that this is a three-step process. In the first step of this process, the applicant comes to the staff. And of course, we all recognize, even though I don't think the public necessarily recognizes, that there's a difference between straight zoning and exceptions. And I think part of the challenge comes when you're part of the public and you're just like, I like seeing the trees on that property. I don't want to see anything else. And they don't understand that there are some private property rights and that people have a right to do something with their property. And they have some rights under straight zoning. So since we don't get involved in the straight zoning piece, usually when they're coming to see us, they're coming to say, I don't like this, you need to stop this, not realizing that there's two ways that this could go. And by not doing the straight zoning, it's coming to through a process where it actually may be better and may be better than what they would have gotten with straight zoning when they were sitting there. So I believe that staff's function is a system of measurements and reviews. So they do that. Sometimes the reviews are done by consultants, but the staff's job is to kind of make sure that it fits all within the square box before it gets presented to move on. And I realize that the owner is often balancing profits against aesthetics, because obviously those are two things that are competing interests that whatever your motivation is for doing something, those are the two things that are kind of going back and forth. So then in step two, it comes to us, the local planning agency, which we're an advisory board. And we do get public input from the public who are allowed to come and talk about those things. It would be very easy if this board viewed their job as a simple yes or no, up or down, that project's good, that project's not good. I don't think I have never thought that was the function of our board. I've always thought that our function, or I've thought that our function is to look to the future and to look to aesthetics. So that if you're planning on doing something on this piece of property, what could make that look better? They've gone through the city, they've gone through what boxes need to be checked, but what could make that something that you could be different? I don't believe that it's our job to determine the market. If a private property owner wants to go out and build a storage unit and it's zoned for that, he can do that. It's not our job to sit there and say, we've got too many of those, or we don't need another one there, that type of thing. I think that's either done by the city commission or it's done by the market, but I don't think that that's our job here. So I look at 12 things from my thought process that I look at when I'm reviewing one of these projects. The first is that city buildings all have four sides. They don't have a front that needs to look pretty, and a back that doesn't need to look pretty, and sides that they don't need to worry about. And I think this board, and especially you four, who I've been with for so long, understands that. And we look at properties to try to make all four sides look acceptable. So if you're driving down the road and you see the back of that tire place on US 1, it doesn't look like just a bunch of awnings or doors that go up, because that's the back of the building. Because anybody driving north on US 1 is going to see that. The second thing is pedestrian connectivity and safety. I'm talking about pedestrians, people walking either between the properties or from your car to the inside, and being able to do that safely. So that has to do with the plantings, that has to do with some variation in pavement, whether it's painting, whether it's crosswalks, whether it's putting brick down, whether it's additional signage, whatever that is, so that people can live a little bit longer, at least till they get into the building without having to worry about that. The third one is acknowledging that in Florida we have sun and rain. So awnings, drive-through boxes that you have to place your orders at, and the drainage plans. All those are things that even though they may check boxes, there is no city requirement that when you put an order in at a drive-through box that you have some shelter from the rain. But I'll tell you that if it's pouring down rain and you're trying to talk out of 2 inches at the top of your window, you know pretty quick that those 2 inches really aren't helping. And that if somebody had said, hey, did you ever think about putting an awning up like they have at Culver's or something like that, that it does make a difference and it is something that helps. Also stepping right outside of your building and not stepping out into the pouring rain and having something that's sheltering you when you step outside. Mail and trash, especially for residential projects. So whether that's screening, whether that's where you're parking for the collection piece, what the distance is, so that you may think, hey, I'm building this huge thing on 6 acres and I'm going to put all the trash back here in the back corner, but not realizing that, hey, maybe the residents would like to have easier access to that. Number 5 is transportation. So that's dealing with bus stops for school children and also looking to the future. We don't really have mass transit now. We have that MARTI thing that's going on. But at some point in the future, we can figure there will be some robust mass transit, and that to expect a owner 20 years from now to go back and retrofit for that is probably unreasonable. It's something that if somebody looked at now, they would be able to do something without too much heartache or hassle, but at least planning ahead for the future. Traffic logic. So we've seen repeatedly, even though we have plenty of people who come from out of town to tell us that people don't have 2 cars, that they don't like to drive that much, that they'll walk 2 blocks to get to somewhere. I think we all know for some reason in Martin County that is not true. People still get in their cars, they still drive, and that's what our habit is. So it's just that logic of knowing that, you can tell me that they're not going to need those parking places, but we've seen over and over again in Martin County that they really do need the parking places at the end of the day. Our homeless population, it's handling those, the ones that are living in the completely vacant parcels that are getting developed. It's how they're handling those. Of course, they have the right to just go in, get the sheriff and get them all thrown out. But I think we've done a good job at handling those things with some dignity and compassion at dealing with those people and not being not supporting a thought of just, you're from out of town, you're not going to have to live here and we can just go on from there. Vegetation, whether it's xeriscaping, native planting, shade, flowering, the heights of plants, etc. I think that's something that we can have an impact on. Hurricane power outages, and I'm talking about the club asking or seeing the value in a clubhouse having air conditioning that's being run by a generator, so that when there is a hurricane outage for no power for, I'm not talking about the whole building, but but when that piece of the grid doesn't have any power for 2 weeks, the ability for those residents who are living there to be able to go into their clubhouse and either charge their phone or get out of the heat, I think has some value. Future thinking, whether it has to do with the electrical cars and creating a situation where there will be charging stations, so that it's again that problem of having to go back and retrofit 20 years from now when that technology comes along and thinking, oh gosh, I wish I'd thought of this 20 years ago. It's thinking ahead for those things. Rain gardens, Wi-Fi access, bike racks, the concept of tot lots now as opposed to full-blown playgrounds, all those kind of things I think are future thinking things that when you get, whether it's a developer or somebody who's coming in who's not thinking in that direction, those things kind of sometimes get missed. And then I think one of the things that we've also been really good about is looking for details, is requiring or requesting elevations and signage, and what do the light fixtures look like, what do the mailboxes look like, what do all these different things, what's your fencing look like, I mean, it's when the guy says, hey, on that back line I'm just going to put a chain link fence because there's nobody there, but we know that within a certain period of time there will be another property adjoining that to be able to weigh whether that's reasonable or unreasonable. The wall that went in behind Wawa's, for example, I mean, that piece that was making them a better neighbor for the other people. And then I think that brings us to the 12th thing, which is being a good neighbor. And looking at it from anything that is new that's coming in needs to either minimally or positively influence the people around them. And then that's part of what makes the composition of what Stewart is. And I think it's kind of our function. My idea has always been that it's our function to hammer out those possibilities and use those possibilities as like launching points to advise the City of Stewart Commission so they can decide what they want to do and where they want to go with it. And it's much more valuable to them than a simple yes or no. Then, of course, it goes to the third part, which is the City Commission, where they get the additional public hearings. But they're pulled in so many different directions. I kind of really think that what we do, as far as the look of the city, is really important. So I've been here for a long time, I think 40 years now, but I've been on this local planning agency for 15 years. And I can honestly say that when I drive around the city now, I can see differences that I know that I have helped make with the rest of you of making things look better. I think this board, this advisory board, is often overlooked in that capacity. I think it's a lot easier to complain and a lot easier to say what you don't like. But I think there is the style and the charm and the looks that we have in Stewart, I believe really is a reflection of what we've done on this board. And I've been honored and proud to serve alongside of you. I've been here for the sign changes when we posted the property, for the ear reviews, for redoing the regulations and the codes, and then these monthly meetings. And I've really enjoyed working with all of you, and I'll still be around. I just won't be coming here anymore. So, but thank you. That was my. Okay, anybody else? Yes,
My
sir.
turn. I got a call from Eula Clark, and she says, Michael, I want change. And I kind of caught me off guard. I said, Eula, what do you want to change? Long story short, she finally said, well, I think she had a hard time saying it. She says, I want to change your position on the board. I want to change to someone else. And I said, okay. I mean, I understand. That's your prerogative. That's your ability to do that. And I said, do you have anybody in mind? She said, not yet, but I want change. So I accept that. Taking on what Lee was saying, there's looking back. I think we have to look into the future. I think the first thing that came to mind with the future was 20 years ago. We were building a Walmart in South Stewart. And how can I put it up? Pretty precise of what we want or what we don't want, or summing it up. And I remember telling the people, we don't want to see it. And we want gazebos for bus stops. Well, we don't have bus stops. I said, someday we will, or there'll be taxis, there'll be somebody. And if you look at our Walmart, it's like no other. You don't see the parking lot. It's hidden. And I think that then enhances the city. And a lot of things we've done in the past. I used to say, we don't want to see north, south, east, and we want to see north, south, east, and west, not front of building, because sometimes it faces the inside and we see the back. It was nice being here. Maybe we'll be back someday. I understand change, and life is good.
And so maybe you two are staying, but if you're staying, congratulations. And we're counting on you.
We're going to need a little seniority. I think it's going to be an interesting board without the legacy information that you guys carry.
Yeah, it's like,
I served on the LPA with Mike and Bill. Last time I served on the LPA was 1994.
Okay.
So they've been here a while as well.
well, and I've been around a while myself.
Yes.
So just speaking from staff perspective and a board member perspective, it came as a shock tonight. For me, this is the first I heard we were losing both of you. But I've been in government a long time. I don't want to even care to count the years, but I've met a lot of people and I've seen a lot of board members and worked with a lot of board members. And I got to tell you, I've never met anybody like you, Lee Roberts. No one in my experience has ever put in the time to be as fastidious and caring and thoughtful of evaluating each and every project, regardless of what it looked like, what size it was, big, small, medium. You always put in the amount of, the more than the amount of time than I can ever remember anybody. And your thoughtfulness has made our jobs, I know, much easier, because if we didn't do it, we knew you did it. And I'm sorry to see the two of you go. Likewise, you know, I hate to lose you as well, because you have and you brought an awful lot to this board. And like I said, I was surprised to hear that we were losing the two of you. So, Bill.
I can say is kudos to what Larry's already told you guys. Obviously, I've known you guys since you've been on the board. And what most of the board has done is we probably, in true sense, relied on the two of you to pick up all the things that we would normally gloss over or not see. Okay? You guys have done a phenomenal job. And I'm not just saying that because you're leaving, because I may have to see you guys later too, right? So, but no, you guys have been phenomenal. You will be missed, both of you. It's going to be natural. So I know Larry's, his speaking, mine, all the best. We'll be seeing you guys around, and at some point we're going to be joining you. Okay, so.
That's what you think. You don't know. They have to keep some institutional knowledge. So.
Well, not always, so, but I'm sure you want to add your condolences.
By the way, I, as a staff member, we are going to miss you guys, because honestly, it makes our lives so much easier when you do catch it. And I can remember ideas with Lee Roberts where, like, they'd be posting the thing and there's 400 parking spaces. She's like, I'm sorry, I've looked this over and there's only 394 on the site plan. Like, oh my God, she counted them. Which is great. And I'm just, the only reason I stood up to talk on the microphone is to say, although Eula calls it change, it really wasn't a reflection on you guys at all. What happened is the Charter Review Board wanted term limits for the city commissioners and gave them to them, and then said no other public officers. And I don't think that was a reflection on you as much as it was a reflection because Kelly Glass Layton was running for county and they had all these discussions about it, and it just kind of spun out of control. And the only reason that you guys, I guess, survived the first firing, and thankfully, because honest to God, staff, we were worried. We were like, wait a second, you can't remove all of the institutional knowledge from any board at any given time and expect it to survive. The idea of transitioning is important. Is that the way this board started out is that it was more than 5 members. And as a result, we have 5 city commission appointees and then at-large members. And I believe you two are the at-large members. So they wanted to say at-large do over 2, and we pushed back and said, listen, we can't just wipe out the board in one meeting. And so they agreed that the at-large members also have 8-year terms, but they get to start the same as the city commissioners this year. So technically you guys are counting your last days, but it's not for 8 more years. So you'll probably make it to the end.
I don't know, we may not make the big end.
There's other issues at play here, and I get that. But the push was this, I guess it's this social media internet age that everybody thinks that yesterday's information is not as important as today's, and therefore, they don't take it into consideration as much. And I think, and Kevin, I'm sure, can vouch for this. From our perspective, it's so nice to have somebody that remembers the Walmart, or that was here for the other project, and that remembers the project that got approved that didn't get built, and this is going to be different, or whatever it might be, and that says, well, wait a second, the engineering is different than we're used to. And having Larry, that's been, he says he's been around in government for a long time. He's the only person I know that, honest to God, their entire adult life. I think he was 17 and 366 days when he started working for the city of Stewart.
October 1, 1974.
Right. And his entire adult life has been committed to and dedicated to Martin County and the city of Stewart, which has turned out to be a great reflection because he has that insight that's so important to us when we're trying to draw on the culture of our community. So we are hopeful, and we're planning to continue sending you guys the agendas for your comments. But I personally wanted to stand up and thank all of you because it's that time of year and we have these annual meetings, but it's so hard when we're trying to present stuff to a staff that, or to a board that is unaware of any of the history or unaware of any of the stuff, because you're literally reinventing the wheel every single meeting. And when we have an experienced board like you guys, it's a walk in the park. We know the board's going to handle it. We know we can just sit there and let the board manage it and finish it. And regardless of the outcome, we know, as Lee Roberts said, it will be a better project than what came in the door at the beginning of the meeting. So we're hopeful that the board evolves, but you know, a demonstration is commitment. I mean, you guys are here, you're doing it, and I just hope everybody else that comes along does do it. And I hope that they're as committed as you guys are. But thank you.
It is, can Lee and, Mike, can they, come to the Christmas party you guys are giving us?
I think the Christmas parties are over. I don't think you're getting them anymore.
No,
I think this was the last
you
one.
didn't authorize it.
Well, I usually remind them. So you got one this year, but I will be very surprised if you have one next year.
Well, I don't know, because when Lee reviews next year's agenda for December. But yes, we will still invite them. They have this legacy member.
As long as we pay our dues, we'll be invited. Yeah. Okay.
Chair, just, I want to echo everything everybody said, but there is another dimension to this that you might not recognize. It's such a powerful thing to be able to sit down with an applicant and say, you need to do these things because you go in front of this board and they're going to ask these questions. We are certain this board is going to ask you these questions and you better be prepared. And our recommendations go through each of the known factors that this board brings in front of us. And so to have that and to be able to sit down with that early on in the process with an applicant and get them to understand that this board is not a pushover. It's not a yes or no. It's a full review. We have members on this board that do that. So be prepared. And it also keeps staff on their toes. We know that anything we miss is going to be pointed out very clearly. And we don't, we appreciate it, but we don't like it. But, both of you, I've been here a couple of times, and been involved with a number of boards, but by far the recent LPA meetings have been, exactly what staff have needed as part of their backup when we brought items forward. So I do appreciate all of that. Thank you.
I do have one recommendation as you reorganize and you get your chair for next time. I would recommend that the city create a form so that the chair in running the meeting can keep track of the things, moving the mailboxes here, et cetera, so that when somebody's ready to do a motion, if the chair was able to, and you don't have to take them all, if you're making the motion, Larry, you can my motion is only going to include these, but at least if you had a summary of what this one said and this one said and that one said, et cetera, of what the points were, so that you're not, as you're making a motion, you're not expecting him to jump in and say, well, what about, did you want to add this? Because I think it gets lost in the discussion sometimes. I think if you created some process where that's kind of like kept track of, it would kind of help.
I understand what you're saying.
Charging stations, bus.
Yeah.
Hovers over drive-throughs.
Yeah.
What's the back look like? Yeah, I know.
But I mean, I'm not talking about this. I'm talking about as you all discuss it. As you all, if you have brought up electric cars, then it's on this list of
No, I
electric cars.
understand what you mean.
So then at least if this person is now not paying attention, they don't, oh yeah, I said I wanted that, but I forgot all about it. And you're making a motion.
Even when it's not in the motion, when Kevin does the city commission agenda item, he always, like, let's say the electric car stations didn't make the motion for approval. He always adds a sentence that said, significant discussion regarding electric car stations. So they do get it from staff as well as the city commission.
Yeah,
It's not as.
I realize that, but at the same time, I realize that there's a huge difference
Oh, yeah.
when an applicant has to redo their plan and show what the LPA approved, rather than them using their old plan and saying, well, here's the plan, and the LPA wanted me to lower these two buildings to two, they voted, they approved it with the buildings lowered by 2 feet, but I kind of like it this way. There's a huge difference between presenting what it is that this board is recommending and presenting what they wanted with just a few comments.
Right.
No matter how much staff pushes what the comments are. So which is why I've always been really careful to say the motion is that for the approval and before it goes to the city commission, that these changes are made on the site plan or made on this kind of stuff, so that the city commission sees that piece. So then what they're actually doing is, if they want to go the direction of what the developer wants to do, they're going backwards from what was presented. So,
Well, Lee brings up a good point. And it's not just the fact that, because she's like our clerk up here. I mean, she's got everything. When we go to make a motion, she's done exactly that, which really makes it easy, because I know if I want to make a motion, but a little hesitant because I don't exactly remember the half a dozen items, well, you can always defer to Lee, and Lee will, it needs to be this and this. You can say, so moved, okay? And otherwise, it hinders you going ahead and making a motion, especially if we had a half dozen items.
But it's complicated because we can't violate sunshine. And so let's say Mike Herbach talked to me before the meeting and he said, I want electric charging stations. Well, if I added that to the form in advance, knowing it was gonna come up,
I
it
wouldn't,
would be wrong. So the only thing the form has to be is just a blank piece of paper.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. It's the fact is, Lee was our clerk up here.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
She does it.
So how do you replace that except to be able to say,
You're gonna do
staff, could you repeat the motion?
Yeah.
Or what were the
What were the
items that were
items?
listed?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
we could write them down and be able to make a motion.
well, see, I really think that that's the chair's job. In running the meeting, I view that is Ryan's job, that Ryan should be sitting there keeping track of all the different pieces that were said. Sorry, Ryan. But, he should be keeping track of what the pieces were, so that if you're ready to make a motion, I can remind you, as Ryan, I can remind you of the things that were discussed right here at this meeting,
That's correct.
so that then you can say, I don't care about those electric cars. I'm not going to put that in my motion.
Okay, but then I can always say, you know what? I can't be chairman because I'll never remember what to write down, right? Okay.
We'll discuss this too after the meeting, because I know that we have like staff meetings, and our clerk tonight sits in the staff meetings right where Kevin's sitting, and as the discussions happen on the wall, it's only 2 or 3 words that she puts down, but she might write electric car.
Yeah.
Might write dumpster, bus stop, whatever. But if there was a running list right there on the screen at the end of the 7 or 8 items, because it's not 200, it's 7
Yeah.
or 8 items. And it just was buzzwords, so that those of you making the motion could look up and formulate your motion, because you, like she said, you might not want electric cars. So you'd look up and see electric cars and say, no, I disagree with that, but I do want bus stops.
Yeah, for the person to determine what he wants in the motion, that would be extremely helpful, because some of the items, there may be 3 or 4 items that you want to make sure goes in, although there may have been half a dozen discussed. So that's a great idea, sir.
So we'll look into seeing the feasibility of that.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be the whole thing, just key words.
Yeah, we
That
can-
helped me anyway.
Can I add that for the most part, I do that throughout the meeting. So if there is, especially when Lee is doing this will be one, and then she explains it. I go down into the motion and I add that. So if at any point you do need to ask, what were some of the items we talked about, most of them are action words like,
She listens to the minutes every time, so she can read them back.
Yeah, so I just want you to be aware, if you ever do have a question, I can try to help as much as I can. It's just when it gets to specifics about how many parking spaces she wanted to add in the actual motion, I might not know that. So, just so you know in the future.
Because in the motion, if the motioner says, and I want to add those parking spaces, the board will itself will refresh.
Yeah. But if right before the motion, if you on your screen could put something up there that had discussed items,
I'm
you
thinking
know,
about how we do that.
and it
I-
was electric
yes.
cars, it was
Yeah.
this, it was
And
that,
it's
you know,
hard
that
with
type of thing.
Zoom and sharing screen and stuff,
Yeah.
so we'll have to figure it out, but I know we're also, that desk right there, believe it or not, is going to be the new station. And we're changing to a different system, whenever they install it. And that may have other possibilities.
Yeah.
We'll have to take that up as we get there.
Could the board up here, I can say, well, add this item because I'd like to have that in the motion.
Right.
You know what I mean? So at least you see the dozen. So the person is going to make the motion, he can compile it from looking
Staring
at
at
that.
that.
And then those agree, disagree, but the motion's made. Okay,
And I'll
so.
say that from staff's perspective, is the person making the motion might say, I motion that we approve electric cars, dumpsters, bus stops, gazebos, 4 more trees, 17, just read the list.
Yeah, well, and that's another issue. There's a huge difference and it puts staff in a bad spot when it's like a motion that says, I want a bus stop at the front entrance designated that has a shelter and has lights at it, you know,
That's
is a lot different than saying, I want you to work at a bus stop with staff.
right.
Because his idea when he goes to staff, and I guess the last best example was Kingswood and the fence between Kingswood and the
Yeah.
rental thing, you know, where in the applicant's mind, it was like if it's their fence, they're going to fix it kind of thing. And it's like, no, that motion was very precise that barrier was going to be fixed at your expense,
Right.
you know? So if he didn't want to fix his fence, you were putting up a new fence, you know? So it went down to the nitty gritty and it didn't just leave it with staff sitting there like, well, I don't know what I'm doing now.
But Jordan's taking most of that down.
Well, I mean, that's up in the minutes, but
So-
if we make that list and then someone that's mailing it in just reads the list as their motion and just does the buzzwords, the motion ends up not being, providing any.
And so it's like, so think of it this way. You need more parking spaces next to the mailbox pickup, right? So if it said parking next to mailbox, there's a lot different between that. So as a developer, my idea of more parking spaces is I'll give you one more. Whereas I think the motion needs to say the 4 parking spaces next to the mailbox needs to be 8,
Right, but
you know?
if Jordan is recording that, then we could ask her to read back.
Then you need to
the
ask her to
sentence.
read it back.
At the time,
Yes.
we
Right.
can ask.
So we can
Or
actually,
just remember, like, the idea is if it says parking next to mailbox, the motioner in making their motion shouldn't read the list. They should say, what's the consensus on the number of parking spaces we want
Yes.
next to the mailbox?
Yeah.
Before making the motion.
right, and then write it down so you don't forget what you.
Anyway, agenda item number 1.
Okay, moving on. Our first item is an annexation of city-owned property. This may sound familiar. We saw it in November at Haney Creek. This is an ordinance of the city of Stuart, Florida, annexing, allocating a future land use of conservation and allocating a zoning category of public for the number 4 city-owned properties adjacent to Haney Creek and Northwest Baker Road, and which are subject to a Florida Communities Trust grant award agreement and being more fully described in the attached exhibits. And then all the other language about repealing other things in conflict and providing for an effective date. So at this time, do any board members have any ex parte communications to disclose?
No.
No.
Okay. And we don't have anybody giving any testimony. Well, if you gave testimony, you're an attorney, and I understand attorneys don't swear, so,
Swear does not swear in.
okay. And so now we have the staff report.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
You may recall, this item was continued from November the 12th, 2020. There are a couple of questions that were raised by the local planning agency. One was relating to the condition that allowed annexation, and 2 was where were the county in terms of their process regarding the piece of property in this location. So those are the 4 city-owned properties around and within the Haney Creek project area. This was part of a Florida Communities Trust grant that was awarded in the year 2000. Part of the requirements and the obligations for that grant was to place these properties within conservation, the future land use of conservation. So we're really doing some housekeeping in terms of looking at that requirement. These properties are all located in the county at the moment. They're owned by the city of Stewart, and they have various county future land use and zoning on there. You can see the grayed out area is a county-owned property, which is also within, well, part of the grant obligation, and that is remaining in county ownership. So at the moment, we see that there are a number of different future land uses on those properties, mobile home, low density and medium density, and the county property itself is low density future land use. The proposed future land use would be to push all of those city owned properties into conservation through the annexation. It gives us control over the zoning and the future land use allocations for those sites. The county, we did reach out to the county, and the growth management department say there are no plans for the county to progress at this time, and they're not aware of any time in the future, the redesignation of that county property into conservation. So they don't have any plans to do that. The zoning, again, all county at the moment, R2 residential, RM, R5, RT, RS6, all sort of residential type and mobile home type zonings. City's proposed zoning, should it be annexed, would be public, which allows passive parks, which is essentially what the properties are using, being used for at the moment, a part of the Haney Creek project. So having said all that, and there is now a city attorney's opinion on the qualification for annexation within their agenda item, staff move approval to first reading at City Commission. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I was waiting to see if there were any questions about my opinion letter, but I will chime in and say that I know for sure that the city manager spoke with Taryn Krizda at the county about this issue in between the meetings. And the county, obviously, first of all of the property comes from the community fund and it's grant money, and nobody can really do anything with it, whether it's dedicated to conservation or not, doesn't mean anything. But from the city's perspective, when we do our comp plan amendments and we apply for other grants and we apply for other recognition and awards, one of the things that they look at is how many acres of land have you placed in conservation? Well, none of this counts toward the city because it's not in the city. So by adding it to the city, it doesn't change the use. It doesn't impact anybody in any direction. And that's why the county's not objecting to it, because they don't really care. And if you look around it, it's not going to lead to some annexation of, some development. It's simply to give the city credit for the land that they are planning to maintain in perpetuity in conservation. And ironically, if you look where the words county-owned property are, that's the city maintained and operated dog park. So the city pays for mowing, fencing, maintenance, lighting, everything, insurance, everything on the dog park, not in the city. And it, by the way, doesn't matter. It's great. It's a community service. Everybody uses it and it's wonderful. But all that land is, as Kevin pointed out, is public. And the point of this is that, yes, there are some issues as to whether or not they might be enclaves, maybe. But if there's no objection, you look at a city map or a county map and you'll see that there are other areas that also were created enclaves without objection. And it kind of goes to what Lee Roberts said earlier. What is the real intention of, are we trying to make this place a better place, and will this make this a better place? And the staff thinks that this would.
Larry, have anything?
Move approval.
Wait a second. We have a motion and a second. Now we'll have a little bit of discussion. Okay? you have anything?
What?
I know that our question before, and perhaps you can answer this, our question before specifically was about B and C.
Yep.
That if you did not add B and C, you would not be creating an enclave. But by I mean, just look at the way
In
that,
theory, yes.
look at the way the map sits, right?
I mean, to me, it's B.
Just B.
Well, I mean, if I annex C alone, I mean, C might create its own enclave, but I think B is the one that creates, because I can't see the top of the map. I think C
Well,
is
if you did
that's-
A and D, so assume you
Right,
annex A and D, right?
Right.
A and D don't have any problem. But then I think the problem becomes, how do you annex, correct? B and C.
well, and you do it by ordinance.
Well, but in knowing
And
that
wait
you're,
31 days and
Right,
nobody appeals.
but knowing that you're not supposed to be creating an enclave.
Right, so what you would do is go to the county, and one of the state statutes says that there's another way to do annexation, and that is by interlocal agreement or by agreement with the county. Broward County, believe it or not, doesn't allow land to be unincorporated. So Broward County, all the land in Broward County is in a municipality. There's just a lot of municipalities. We did go to the county. I mean, following this meeting, it wasn't taken lightly. Kevin spent lots of time, went to the county, hoping to just get that other property in or just wrap it up or do whatever we could do. And they don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. And then honestly, there's a lot of things that could go on. Like in my mind, if I owned that county property, I probably wouldn't put in conservation either, because I'd say to myself, maybe we designate it as a blue field. And then the next time somebody needs to pay into Bluefield, they don't pay St. Lucie County and buy wetlands up there. We get it designated in the future and they pay us for the land. So there's nuances, but the reason this is coming forward is a direction of our city commission that has also read my report, that recognizes that, clearly there's issues with regarding to accessing the property without going through the municipal boundaries. But another thing when you're doing annexations that you look at is, are we going to provide municipal services such as water, utilities, et cetera? But this land is going in conservation. So from an annexation perspective, it really isn't for development. It really isn't for providing services. It really isn't for a municipal purpose as much as it's for preservation. And the city wants to preserve the land it has. But I didn't write in the report that it wasn't an enclave.
Right, and
I
is it our role to determine whether it is or isn't?
Well, he does say it's going to create.
Well, I didn't say
I
it
mean, he
wasn't.
says
gonna.
it will be an enclave, so it is going to be an enclave. I mean,
Well,
it's,
yeah, but a number of years ago, we annexed some 2,000 acres. And if I remember, out of 2,000 acres, there's like 1 acre that didn't make it through the courts.
Well, and for what it's, right, all of it was approved in the state, there was big litigation, hundreds of thousands of dollars is spent, and it still all got approved. Now, I'll tell you, if you look at Sailfish Lane in the city of Stewart, that's still out in the county,
Edgewater.
and that's an enclave. And if you look at the sheriff's and jail, it's an enclave. I mean, there's just no way to argue that it isn't. And Snug Harbor is probably an enclave. I don't know how you get to Snug Harbor without driving through the city. So there are lots of enclaves that are inadvertently created. And I think if you were to try and create a development for enclave, and it was an enclave and you were not going to be providing municipal services and the resident was just going to be paying city taxes, but they weren't going to get any services from the city, and it was just for the purpose of circumventing county zoning,
Right.
I think it would fail, and I think the county would challenge it. And I can tell you that we told the commissioners and staff and David, and we said, look, we'll move forward on this, but if the county objects, we're not doing it. And so we've told the county, and again, I think it's because they know it's kind of a formality of just conservation anyway. So we haven't gotten any objection, and we've talked to them probably 20 times about it.
And I've actually received a number of calls from residents in the area who support this. Once they hear that it's going to conservation, it's a reassurance to them. I mean, what they don't want to happen to this is any future development in this location. And that just really settles.
sure. And
neighbors' minds.
quite frankly, if I were living there in that part south of Baker Road, right, in the county-owned property, I would be kind of hammering on Doug Smith saying, you need to put this into conservation.
Yeah.
I don't care who it, so it belongs to the city, it doesn't matter, but you need to change that to conservation because that's what it needs to be. But it's kind of like, since they're not taking, since the county's not taking any initiative and has no interest in going there.
Well, we're paying for the dog park, so.
Yeah.
We're just gonna put the rest of it, we don't have to pay anything for maintenance, right?
I mean,
So any
that's
other
my perspective is-
discussion? Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I mean, my perspective is exactly what he said. This is purely conservation. And it will always be conservation. It's, it's low risk. I mean, if somebody does object, then they're, but as far as it is city owned and annexing it and putting it in, keeping it in conservation in perpetuity, I don't have an objection to it.
Anything?
No.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Would you like to call the roll?
Board Member Massing,
Yes.
Board Member Herbach,
Yes.
Board Member Mathers,
Yes.
Vice Chair Roberts.
Yes. Okay, I think we're done. Thanks. Go home.
Not quite, not
Oh.
quite. I
Right?
don't know, many people don't know Mike Herbach as well as I've come to know Mike Herbach. And recently, over the last 2 years, we've shared some real interesting stories of explorations and adventures. And Mike, I don't think many people know the adventures that Mike's had in his
Is that you?
years.
No, I'm not in the picture. I take the picture.
It's a shame that he's not in the
I was
picture.
gonna say, which
Yeah.
one are you?
And I've sat there, studied it for a long time, and I couldn't
might have
figure
seen
out.
it, but not
Yeah.
A long time ago.
Yeah. So 1957, he went to England, bought that car in the background, and then traveled through Europe and North Africa, and then
South Africa, yeah.
yeah, and then returned it to the same place he bought it from a few months later.
That's not a 1957 picture.
Morris Minor.
It's a yeah.
It's a 57
Uh,
car.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but it's that.
That looks
photograph
like it's
that-
in the
It's not
70s.
1957. No,
70.
73.
73. I was gonna
73.
say, I recognize
say.
the bell bottom.
Yeah.
pants.
I could tell
Yeah.
the hairdo. That's why I thought it was
So-
right.
Yeah.
Mutton
Yeah.
chops and
Sorry.
hair.
Yeah, I mixed up the dates there. But he not only that, he traveled all over the world, and I think it's the Explorers Club, is it, Mike? You remember
I didn't hear you.
the Explorers Club,
The
Explorers
Explorers Club.
The Adventurers Club.
Adventurers Club, who have members such as or had Neil Armstrong, Edmund Hillary,
Whoa.
the guy who sailed across the Atlantic, and I've seen the list, and Michael Herbach is on that list.
Really?
It's quite an amazing story, and at
We're
some point,
firing him from the LPA.
I don't know.
There you
I don't know.
go.
Unfortunately,
Check us off
yeah.
for you, huh?
and I think so. Mike, it'd be great just to keep in touch with you and share more stories, because it's been such a valuable discussions that we've had outside of this meetings, and I do appreciate that. Unfortunately for us all, I couldn't find a photograph of Lee.
Oh, you're
and,
lucky.
but it's really been a pleasure, Lee, and you really have been the foundation
She has.
for review of really intense review of projects that are coming forward. And with staff really do appreciate what you've done.
You kept us
Yeah.
all very
Yeah.
honest.
Well, and I think we work together. We work really well together as a team. I mean, I think that's, instead of being isolated in your own little viewpoint
Yeah.
of whatever it is, I mean, I think we could kind of understand and see where each other was coming from,
I agree.
Yeah.
More than you know.
Yep.
It was a wonderful world.
It was fun while it lasted.
Two quick things that come to mind. I always tell this one story. I've traveled everywhere in the world, but I was traveling across the Arctic on dog sled, building igloos. And you did a snow knife, which is a machete. And the igloo is about as tall as this desk, because you can only stay in it 2 nights because your breath ices it up. But I'm laying in there with caribou skins on me, with a candle stuck in the side, and you see your breath. And the thing that came to mind was, I hear when you freeze to death, you just go to sleep. It was 40 below outside and 20 below inside, but you were warm.
Oh.
But anyway, that's,
Oh, my goodness.
and I was a sheep herder in New Zealand. I used to sleep out much as I had a horse. I rode a horse all over New Zealand. But
Wow.
covered the whole world. Didn't want to miss anything.
Man.
Good for you.
Half of those places now you wouldn't even be allowed back in. And that's anybody, not just
You can
Mike.
go back. You can go
Right.
back. Some places you can't go back. You can't go back to Iraq, or Baghdad,
Yeah, yeah.
Babylon. You can't go back there. But, we still go back though. Not now with the virus.
Wow.
Wow.
Anyway,
Well, you guys will be sorely missed.
Okay, well, just know we're thinking
I'll
about
be
you.
calling you.
So when you guys are doing Costco, just remember, we're thinking about you.
We'll see you out there, right?
I will, one of the things I will do is, I know you have an ex officio from the school board, so I'm going to try to get the school district to be a little bit more
That would be good.
engaged, let's call that, since they do have an ex officio, but.
Yeah, you're supposed to.
So if it
be-
sounds like me,
Nah,
don't think it's me. Be fine.
Yeah.
Okay,
very good.
Thank you. Thank you all.
All righty.
so then we're adjourned.
Yeah.
Thank you.
good job, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Best of luck, you